Shlema for everyone that needs protection. Today we're going to start the bottom line of Kuf Aleph, Amid Beis, 101b. We ended off with a question on Rav Chisda. We're going to say that the Brisa that was asking the question, that we asked the question from, is one opinion. Rav Chisda has a different opinion that he follows. Just to go back, what's happening here? We had a Machlekes Rav and Shmuel regarding if you change a place, if you change your location, when you make Kiddush. So Shmuel says that you're not Yaitze Kiddush if you didn't eat there, but you have to make a new bracha on the wine as well. You're not Yaitze anything basically in your new location. And Rav says, no, only the wine you have to say a new bracha, but Kiddush you Yaitze. Then we got into a discussion. Then we introduced Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says that you Yaitze the wine as well. Yaitze the wine, Yaitze Kiddush, even if you change location. We had questions on Rabbi Yochanan because we have brises that say Shini Makim Tzarech Levarech, that if you change your location, you have to say a new bracha. We said, okay, so you have to do Rabbi Yochanan. We slugged up Rabbi Yochanan. We had two statements of Rav Chisda. One was in the name of Rav Huna, one was in his own name. First statement was that when we say Shini Makim is an issue, that's only from house to house, but not in one house itself. That's not a problem. You can move around, and the one bracha that you made earlier still is effective for the rest of the house. The second statement of Rav Chisda was the interesting point that we're getting into, is that when do we say you need to recite a new bracha if you change your location? That's only on items that don't require a bracha in its own place, an after bracha in its own place. So, for example, anything that you make a burn nefashos on, which would be water, fruits, whatever, that aren't from Peres Eretz Yisrael, Shivas Aminim. So those things, if you move your location, you need a new bracha. The logic for that was that once I stand up, my meal's over. There's nothing holding me back there. So it's a full hesach hadas. However, and the contrast to that is anything that requires me to recite a bracha in this location. When I stand up, I didn't say a bracha achrayiniyah. I'm still in the middle of the meal. I am going to do something. I still have to go back to recite the bracha. I'm not done. I'm still held there. So therefore, if I'm going to eat something else somewhere else, I don't need to recite a new bracha. So, which means that those items those foods that require a bracha achrayna in its own place don't require a new bracha. Anything like, for example, well, obviously you would assume washing. If you washed, people think they wash in the morning, they can bench at night, they can walk around. So that would be like according to this logic, that look, I didn't bench yet, so I'm still in the middle of the meal, right? We had a question, then we had one other opinion. We quoted Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says, no, you always have to recite a new bracha. It doesn't matter what type of food it is. Then we have a question on Rav Chisda. The question on Rav Chisda was a brisa that says that if people are sitting and eating, and comes along a chassan or a kala, and they want to get up to go dance, to go to celebrate, but they're in the middle of eating in their location. So it says that they can get up and they can go and they can come back, and it's not a problem as long as not everyone got up to go dance. But if everyone got up to go dance, then the meal is over. And they have to recite a new bracha, they have to bench, recite a new bracha. Now, what were they eating? It's going to be a big difference according to Rav Chisda if no one's left there. If they were eating things that were shahakal or fruits or something, so then we understand why they need a new bracha. They got up and they left. But if they washed and they washed, they had Zainas, or maybe wine, and whatever, wine's included. So let's say that's what they had. Then why do they have to recite a new bracha? They have to go back to say the old bracha. They're not done the meal. It's not a real haschadas. Just because no one was left, but so what? They're still in the middle of the meal. So we said, Kashal Rav Chisda. That's a question on Rav Chisda. And the support for the question is because it says Akru Raglayim. Since they got up, they uprooted their feet. That must have meant that it was a more considerable meal. They weren't supposed to get up until they benched. It means they had real food there. And nevertheless, they have to recite a new bracha if no one's left. So Amar Rav Nachum bar Yitzchak, the bottom line. Nachum Yitzchak says, Man Tana Akiras. Who's the one that taught this discussion about Akira? That if they uproot their feet and they go to dance, we're now on the top of Kufez, then they get up to dance by the Chassan and Kala, that they have to recite a new bracha. Who taught that? That's not everyone's opinion. That's only the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. If that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, then we'll say that Rav Chisda holds like the Rabbanan that argue with Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Chisda holds that you don't need to recite a new bracha, even if no one's left. Everyone got up the whole meal. Everyone emptied out from the room. There's no one left there, and you still don't have to recite a new bracha. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds that you have to recite a new bracha. And he doesn't have to follow Rabbi Yehuda, he can follow the Rabban. The Tanya, it was taught in the Brisa. If friends are sitting and eating, and they uprooted their feet. That means they got up to go do something. What did they go to do? To go daven. To go learn. There was a shir. It was a tish. That's what it was. But what does it mean, akuraglayim? Akuraglayim means that obviously they were eating something significant, something that would have required a bracha b'ayna b'mkayma. So what's the halacha here? Kshein yotzin, when they leave, ain't in a bracha l'mafreya. They don't have to bench. Kshein chayzim, and when they return, ain't in a bracha l'chatchila. They don't need a new bracha either. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda. My Gemara says Rav, but it must be Rabbi. It's missing here. My Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, "B'med devarim amurim." In what case were these words said? That they don't require after bracha or a new bracha. That's only if they left people there. But if they didn't leave people there, then when they leave Tinu Bracha L'Mafreya, they have to make a benching, an after bracha. When they return Tinu Bracha L'Chatchil, they're going to need a new bracha. Okay. What do we see from this? That there's an opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that is the one that's making this this criteria that people need to be left there in order for you not to be required to say a new bracha. But if no one's left there, then you do need a new bracha. Now, what did Rabbi Yehuda say? B'med devarim amurim. So the Rashbam brings from a Gemara Eruvin that whenever Rabbi Yehuda says the words B'med devarim amurim, he's always arguing. Whenever Rabbi Yehuda says Ei Masai, he's only explaining. As he had a choice, Rabbi Yehuda, what to say over here. Rabbi Yehuda could have said, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ei Masai, when do we say this? That would have been explaining what the opinion of the Rabbanan is. But he didn't do that. He said, B'med devarim amurim. In what case were these words said? That means he's doing something else other than explaining. He's also saying that I disagree with you, and I only hold of what you're saying in a specific case. Yeah, that's one of the opinions over there. That's how Rabbi Yehuda works. It's a Mishnah rule. That there's a difference between B'med devarim amurim and Ei Masai. When Rabbi Yehuda says that. Okay. What comes out from this? That Rav Chisda has a support. Rav Chisda has a support that you never need to recite a new bracha if you ate foods that require a bracha in their place. You can get up and walk to other places, and it's not a problem. I know, but you don't need a new bracha, and you don't have to bench. You can walk around. You can leave your location, and you don't need a new bracha, even if no one was left there. Now the Gemara says, "El taima." However, according to the Rabbanan that you just said, the bidvarim atun bracha lachreim b'mkaiman. When it comes to things that require a bracha in its location, therefore, when they leave the location, they don't have to say a new bracha. I'm sorry, intin bracha mafred, they don't have to say grace after meals and after bracha. And when they return, they don't have to say a new bracha if they're going to eat more. But if it's things that don't require a bracha in its own location, for example, you had a drink of water or you had a fruit, you don't have to say a bracha, they can say a burn nefashis anywhere. You see, the Rabbanan hold that certain times you do have to say a bracha, a new bracha, if you change location. What are those times? If you didn't eat something that requires a benching or a man shalish or a alamechia. If you ate something that only requires a burn nefashis, you have to recite a new bracha. There should be a question on Rabbi Yechanan. Now we have to go back to remember what Rabbi Yechanan said. Rabbi Yechanan said that if you change locations, you don't need a new bracha. And here we're saying if you change locations, you do need a new bracha for foods that don't require a benching. Here we're saying that you do need a new bracha. Rabbi Yechanan said you don't need a new bracha. Again, we're only talking about foods that don't require a benching. Now, if you look carefully at this, there's a bit of a problem, which we mentioned yesterday. What was Rabbi Yechanan talking about? He was talking about wine. And he says it doesn't require a new bracha. Well, so what? Wine doesn't require a new bracha anyway, even according to the Brisa, even according to the Rabbanan. Why? Because wine is man shalish. So what's the kasha on Rabbi Yechanan? Yeah, this was what Tosfos asked on the Rashbam yesterday. Where's Tosfos? Tosfos is on Kuf Aleph, this long Tosfos along the side of Kuf Aleph on the Beis. I don't know, it's got to be 15 lines down. It says, Miu Kasha, Diyabi Yayin Bechlal Dvarim Atuna Bracha Lachrein Ben Kaiman in Kina Mayi Tes Rabbi Yechanan Lael, the Rabbi Yechanan Iri Bein, the Amai the Kam Rabbi Yechanan Fin the Yayin Amiyatu, that's Rabbi Yechanan Kamei. Right, them came polygraph Chizda, okay. We could always answer this. No, Tosfos over there was asking on the first question that we had, but the same question would be over here as well. That what are you telling me? It's a kasha on Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan was only talking about wine. The Rashbam answers this question. The Rashbam says, let me just go back one step. Which category is wine included in? Is wine included in something that requires a bracha in its place, or is wine not included in that? That's a machlokes between the Rashbam and Tosfos. Rashbam says it's included in something that requires a bracha in its place, which means that if I drink wine according to Rav Chisda, I can go to another location and it's not a problem. I can continue to drink there. Why? Because I didn't say an after bracha beforehand, so I'm still attached to I'm still in the middle of the meal. Tosfos doesn't say that. Tosfos says no, wine, it's over. According to Tosfos, we have a question now, a very clear question from a brisa, where it says that dvarim she'enim tzrichim bracha m'kayma, anything that doesn't require a benching, a real benching, so then I need a new bracha, including wine. This is what the brisa says. The kasha on Rabbi Yechanan. Very good. The Gemara's kasha on Rabbi Yechanan's claim. However, if I learn like the Rashbam, then what's the Gemara's question on Rabbi Yechanan? The Rashbam says that wine is included in those things that do require a bracha in its location. And so you're asking a question on Rabbi Yechanan why you don't have to say a new bracha. Well, wine is one of those things that you don't have to say a new bracha. So the Rashbam we said yesterday says that Rabbi Yochanan was including everything. He was including more than that. He was including he was including other drinks as well. So the kasha is on the other drinks, not on the wine, and that avoids all the questions. The Gemara says, 1 second, you're taking a brisa. The brisa has a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. You're using the Rabbanan to support Rav Chisda. Actually, we didn't say that. We just said that there's no question on Rav Chisda because it's Rabbi Yehuda that holds that opinion. We didn't actually pronounce that the Rabbanan is support for Rav Chisda. But you're taking the Rabbanan and using it as a question on Rabbi Yochanan. It says, Rabbi Yochanan, he had a question on before. He had a very strong question. Up on the top of Kuf Aleph Amud Beis, you said, the third line down, it says, Tiyufta de Rabbi Yochanan, Tiyufta, you already slugged up Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara says, Amalach Rabbi Yochanan will respond. 1 second. I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Name a mehan nami tavi Tiyufta. What we're asking is, maybe somehow you'll get out of that question. And you'll say, okay, Rabbi Yochanan's right. So we're saying, no, we have a question from Rabbi Yochanan from this price. 2 questions. We have to, what are the, kick him while he's down or something, a double attack in case he gets out of the first one. Well, we have another attack on Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan said, you don't have to recite a new bracha when you change locations. And here you see you do have to. We had one brayso before, we have another brayso that you do have to. Amalach Rabbi Yochanan says, "Who didn't afilu dvarim she'ein tin and bracha lachreim kein nami and she'ein tzrichim levarach." You want to know something? He says, the truth is, the Rabbanan are more inclusive than what you think. The Rabbanan hold that you never need a new bracha when you change locations. Rabbi Yochanan is saying they agree with me, with my opinion. You never need a new bracha when you change locations. So why they choose to discuss only things that require a bracha achrona in their place that you don't have to say a new bracha? They could have been more inclusive. They could have said not just akru ragleim. Remember, akru ragleim meant that they had to uproot their feet, meant that they were really in the middle of a meal that required them to say a bracha achrona right here. Why do they have to say that? They could have been drinking water or eating an apple. And the same halacha would have applied according to the way Rabbi Yochanan is explaining it. This was just to tell you the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that even akru ragleim, even things that require an after bracha in its place, you still have to say a new bracha if no one's left in that location. What's the reason why you wouldn't have to say a new bracha? That's because you left some people there. If you didn't leave anyone there, okay. So he says that don't be medayik that this brisa that says you don't require a new bracha is only referring to things that you have to say a real after bracha. Don't be medayik that, because that was not the condition according to the Rabbanan. That was only the condition that was not a condition according to Rabbanan. That was just said to say that Rabbi Yehuda is so strict that even things that require a new bracha, you still, in its place, even things that require an after bracha in its place, you still have to say a new bracha if you go to another location. Okay. Basically, what we just did was we said that the chiddush over here is not the chiddush of the Rabbanan. The chiddush is the chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda, that you always need a new bracha when you go to a new location, if there's no one left. Rashbam asks a question. Why are you telling me a chiddush and a chumrah? I would like to hear a chiddush and a kula. Usually, koicha de teira adif. The Rabbanan are being more lenient. You're not telling me their full leniency. You're telling me Rav Yehuda's full chumrah. It's like usually the Gemara says koicha de teira adif. Koich de teira adif. It's better to tell me. It's a bigger chiddush to tell me a heter, and the Rabbanan are the ones that are being mekel. So why are you telling me akru ragleim that even according to that the Rabbi Yehuda that requires a new bracha, it would even be by dvarim hatunim bracha achreim kaiman. The Rashbam answers that it's not really a chiddush according to the Rabbanan that you don't require a new bracha. You shouldn't require a new bracha anyway. The chiddush in this case would only be the chumrah. So that's what he says. He says, "Ein laimar kach, ve'in koichan v'koich hashivas imein matzrichim levarach. B'svarahu, given shleisi echadas b'ntain lami yachsel levarach." He says, according to the Rabbanan, there's no chiddush. It's a regular svara. Okay. Taisvus here. 1 second before we do that. Yeah, Taisvus here says that let's say someone was eating and he realized he didn't daven. So he goes to daven. Does he have to say a new bracha? There's obviously not. You see from here that not. They went. Where did they go? They went to shul. However, he says 1 second. We had two cases over here. One case was they went to go dance at a wedding. Another case was they went to go daven. Going to dance at a wedding, theoretically, you can still eat while you're dancing. I mean, theoretically. But you can't eat while you're davening. Now, if that's the case, when you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei, you're not allowed to be eating. So that means that really your meal has stopped during the Shemona Esrei. So that's considered a hefsek in the meal. You really should be required to recite a new bracha. Tosfos mentions this. He says, Mishta Bruch Abadi Adadi Layafsher, you should have to say a new bracha. He says the truth is that when do we say that when you can't eat, that's considered your meal is over? That's only by benching. Because by benching, it's more than just you can't eat. Benching, the Gemara that says that's by benching, because by benching it actually stops your meal. He wanted to say, why do you have to say a Bari Priya Gafen when you bench on a kais? Why do you have to say a bracha right afterwards? I mean, that cup was part of that meal. The answer is because the meal is ended. It's not that I wasn't able to eat while I was benching, but it's the benching stopped the meal entirely. Now I need a new bracha. So if it would be that I wasn't able to eat while I was benching, then the same thing would apply to davening. But that's not the pshat. The pshat is that the benching stops the meal. Okay, that's 1 point. In this Teisus Akravaglayim. Is there another point in here? Yeah, there's an interesting discussion about when you require a new bracha, does it mean that saying a new bracha is enough, or does it mean that you have to mamish bench? I'll give you an example. This is this big Teisus discussing. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're in the middle of a meal, you finish the meal, and you wash my machrayim. It says you're not allowed to eat anymore. What does it mean you're not allowed to eat anymore? You're not allowed to eat anymore until you bench and then say a new bracha. It doesn't mean I'm not allowed to eat anymore until I say a new bracha without benching. Yeah, I think we hold that you have to bench. You can't just say a new bracha. But basically, that's this place or something that discusses this. Okay. Tanya Kavaseder Rav Chisda, we have a support for Rav Chisda. Remember, Rav Chisda made a difference between the different types of food. Some of them you can go to a new location and it's not a problem, some of them not. See, don't require a new bracha. The Rashbam is all excited about this. Look, it says yayin. That's the shita. Yayin is the big deal. Tosfos says, take wine out of it doesn't say yayin in this price. It's mistaken the girsa. Okay. Tosfos just asked, why do you have to bring a riot or a chizda from here? You just quoted a brisa that has a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan supported Rav Chisda. Why do you need a new brisa? So Tosfos says the only way that I that I got Rabbi Yehuda to be arguing with the Rabbanon over there was because I interpreted Bamed Dvarim Amurim to be a machlekes. But it's not necessarily a machlekes. There's other shittas that hold that Bamed Dvarim Amurim isn't a machlekes. If that's the case, I really don't have any support for Rav Chisda. I just have that it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Now I have a brisa that supports Rav Chisda clearly. Kitan Rabbanon, starting in the brisa. Bnei Chabura sheim mesubin. Bnei Chabura, members of a group, they're eating the Kiddush Aleim Hayom, and it becomes the holiday. Places before said that this would apply even on Pesach. There's a thesis that we had Daf Kuf, thesis Machlal, says Bnei Chabur Shem Subin, stomach tani the Kiddush being Shabbos being Pesach. Okay, let's see. Kiddush Aleim Hayom. They're middle of eating. They probably shouldn't be eating then, but that was a machlekes. If it's Erev Shabbos, if it's Erev Pesach, there was no machlekes. They shouldn't be eating. But whatever the case is, they're eating. Maybe they started at an appropriate time. Maybe I'm like koshel yayin. You bring them a cup of wine. What are they going to do with the wine? They say Kiddush. One cup of wine would be for Kiddush. Second cup of wine would be for benching. Why do you have to say Kiddush before benching? I mean, what are you going to do? The answer is that he needs to drink a cup of wine when he's finished benching. He can't drink a cup of wine until he makes Kiddush. So we have him make Kiddush before he benches. Then he benches and he can drink the cup of wine. He's going to be drunk by the time what does it say? Yayin shalach haramasan, it's the mishaka. So this is according to, there's one girsa here that goes like this. This is the girsa that Rashbam accepts. You say Kiddush first, and then you bench. And the reason for the Kiddush was to allow you to drink the wine by benching. Yeah.
But do you have to drink wine? We do Birkat Hamazon without drinking wine anytime.
There's a machlekes if that is a chiyuv or not. A lot of the Gemara follows that opinion that it's a chiyuv. That Birkat Hamazon ala kais is a chiyuv. A lot of the Gemara does that. For some reason we're very lenient about this. I'm not sure why. When there's 10 people there, then all of a sudden they bring a kais. I don't know if there's really a difference like that. Maybe. Yeah, in the Hayam Yaim, it says that we're makbid to say Birkat Hamazon ala kais. Yeah, I said this once in the yeshiva over there. 3 meals over there. So it has to be wine. They said they're going to give you Rashi wine or grape juice. I said, I'll forget it. It's fine. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
When it says Shani, I assume that means bring a second cup.
Yeah.
So is this a source that you can't use the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see it on that when we turn the page. Yeah, that's a good deal. Correct. A good observation. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. If you remember at the beginning of the parak, we said that Rabbi Yehuda holds that you have to interrupt your meal, mafsikin. Interrupt your meal for Kiddush. You can't, you're done. Comes Shabbos, it comes Yom Tov, you have to interrupt. The meal's over. You can't continue through. So he says, okay, so you have to bench. That's the main point over here. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to bench. There was a Kiddush also, but you have to bench. Rabbi Yossi says, no, you can continue eating until it gets dark. The words Shetechshach throw me off. I would like it to say, afilu leachar Shetechshach. Because that's what Rabbi Yossi is saying. Rabbi Yossi says you really don't have to stop at all. You continue eating. You started a meal before. Rabbi Yossi holds ein mafsikin. Remember? Rabbi Yossi held that you don't have to stop. The Rashbam writes it clearly. Rabbi Yossi you finish your meal. Misha techsha. Okay, maybe that's supposed to be the gersa that he's telling us. What happens now? Gomro, when they finish the meal, Kais Rishon, Mevarach Lav Birchas Hamazon. The first cup you can say benching on. Rabbi Yossi is not concerned about eating before Kiddush over here. You're allowed to continue the meal. Rabbi Yossi holds. But Hasheni, the second cup, Omer Lav Kedusha Sayam, you make Kiddush on. Remember, Rabbi Yossi held that Kiddush b'Makam Suda could even be after the meal. The meal that I just ate, I'll make Kiddush afterwards, that will go back, that we had in the Taisvus at the beginning. Rabbi Yossi holds you can do that. Okay, Gemara has a question. Naftali, this was your observation. It says, Amai, why do you have to do this? Why don't you say one? You want to use one cup? Why don't you use one cup for the benching and for the Kiddush? Rashbam and Rashi both say, and Taisvus say, they all say, that we're only asking according to Rabbi Yossi. Why aren't they asking according to Rabbi Yehuda? Taisvus explains the Birchas HaMazon for Rabbi Yehuda was going on my last meal, of course. The Kiddush is going on my meal that I'm about to eat, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds my old meal is not a Shabbos meal. So, according to him, I for sure can't use one cup for both of these. But according to Rabbi Yossi, my old meal that I just finished, it's now 11 o'clock at night. I started at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. There was already candle lighting in the middle and whatever. I just benched, and my Kiddush is going to be on this meal that I just benched on. So use one cup. Why can't you use one cup? Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Sheshis. I have a note here that says that's impossible. Rav Huna is older than Rav Sheshis. And they have a different gear, so they say, Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Okay, whatever the case is. You can't say two kedushas, two blessings. Birchas HaMazon is called kedusha. You can't do these two blessings on one cup. My timer, why not? Because you don't want to join together, bundle together mitzvahs. The Gemara views this as a distraction from each mitzvah. You're supposed to do a mitzvah without distraction. When you do mitzvahs chavilas, you bundle it together. It looks like you're not focused. You have to do each mitzvah independently. Oh, we're gonna say that. Gemara says, "V'loi, you can't do this." Tanya, Avram Nasan, you see, but it says in the Brayso, "Nichnas lebeisiv." It's Shabbos. Someone comes home after Shabbos. Levarech ala yayin, v'alamar, v'alabasam, v'achach Omer Havdalah ala kais. So far, there's no question. It says someone comes home on Mitzvah Shabbos. He makes the bracha on the wine. We always say the bracha on the wine first. It's machlek special b'shamay, but that's what we do. We say the wine first. Then you say alamar. Mar is very meriaish. Then you say on the besamim. This is not our opinion. We do it the other way. We do besamim and then mar. This is a machlekes, I think, also special b'shamay. This is the wrong way. Whatever the case is, that's not our point. Our point is v'achgach Omer Havdalah ala kais, and then you say Havdalah. Okay, so far no problem. But mainly ala kais echad. But let's say you only have one cup, and you want to have malav malka. There's two shittas here. How to learn this? One shita is mainly ala kais echad means that you were really in the middle of shalosh shidduchos, and you need to bench, and you also need to make Havdalah. Or there's another opinion that's really. You're not. What do you mean in the middle of shalosh shidduchos? You said anichnas lebeisai. You're not eating. You just came home, but you want to eat. So now you only have one cup. There's a problem. You're not even allowed to eat if you don't have a cup of wine for benching. How are you going to eat? You're not going to be able to bench. You need a cup of wine for benching. According to this sheet, benching, the cup of wine for benching is ma'akiv. You can't start your meal. So what do? You don't make Havdalah. You first wash. You wash before Havdalah. Or maybe it's the middle of Shal Shidduch. There's two ways Tais explains this. Whatever the case is, I'm going to make Havdalah on my cup of wine that I just used for benching. The Gemara says, oh, ain't shiny. It said you only have one cup of wine. That's a different story. We're not talking about when you only have one cup of wine. We're talking about, we said before that you take one cup and you do it for this. You take one cup to do it for that. You're asking me a question about a guy that only has one cup of wine. Maybe one cup of wine, you're right. But if you have 2 cups of wine, then you're supposed to spread it out. This was the case. We had 1 cup of wine. Gemara says, really? He only has 1 cup of wine? That's what you're talking about. He says, 1 second. But we have a case that if Yom Tov falls after Shabbos, Yom Tov, Motzei Shabbos is like this year Pesach, right? He for sure has wine. It's Yom Tov Shachar Shabbos. How many cups of wine did they give him? They give him 4 cups of wine. We learned in the Mishnah. Everyone has wine. It's the beginning of Yom Tov. And the Islay, Amarav Yakna. What's Yakna? Yayin Kiddush Ner Havdalah. He says Kiddush and Havdalah on the same cup of wine. What are you telling me? And I said, Mrs. Chavilas, you're not allowed to put it together. You see, you put it together. You tell me this is only where he doesn't have more than 1 cup of wine. What are you talking about? He has more than wine. This is Yom Tov. Amri, the Gemara explains, Midla Yomar Zman. And notice everyone's very polite. It says, why do you say Yakna? You're supposed to say Yakna has. The Gemara's Medayik. Yeah, you're right. Why didn't it say Yakna has? What happened to the Zayin, the Zman? Zman means Shechianu. Why isn't he saying a Shechianu when you said Amarav Yakna? Michlal the Shvi Shel Pesach Askin, and it must be the 7th day of Pesach. Aha. 7th day of Pesach, he's out of wine. His stock has been going down. His supply of wine every day. Alter Rebbe says you have wine every day of Cholamayit. So nothing left. He has 1 cup of wine. So he comes home. So he says Kiddush and Havdalah on 1 cup. The kol my dahavale achale velesle, everything that he had already eaten. Eaten. Yes, that's what they call drinking wine, I guess. The Gemara says, 1 second. V'hayom tov rishon di'eslei. What about if it's the first day of Yom Tov? We're there for sure he has wine. V'amar Abaya yakzana. Abaya says, you say, yayin kiddush zman, ner havdalah. But Rav Amar yakna has. Rav says, you say, yayin kiddush ner havdalah. Yayin Kiddush Ner Havdalah is man, Shechianu. And we're talking about obviously the first day, the first night of Pesach, where they give every person 4 cups of wine. Even if he's a poor person, he gets 4 cups of wine. He for sure has an extra cup. Why does he have to say Kiddush and Havdalah on 1 cup if you hold that you're not supposed to do mitzvahs together? Gemara explains. Ela Havdalah v'Kiddush chadamilsi, v'chsamazon v'Kiddush trei milinino. When you say Kiddush and Havdalah together, that's acceptable. But Kiddush and Birchas Hamazon or Havdalah and Birchas Hamazon together, Kiddush and Birchas Hamazon together is a problem. Kiddush and Birchas Hamazon is a problem. Kiddush and Havdalah is not a problem. Different ways of looking at why is it not a problem. Kiddush and Havdalah could be, well, both of them are separating me, Kodesh L'chol. So it's the same concept. This is separating the old one, and this is bringing in the new one. But it's separating from between kedushas. Birchas Hamazon has nothing to do with that. So to throw that together, it's just not. It's not complementary. Those two mitzvahs. The other interpretation is Kiddush. Yeah, they have other interpretation. I think the Kiddush comes before that. Why do I say Kiddush before Havdalah? Oh, that the Gemara's going to ask. That the Gemara's going to ask later. Okay. Tesis has an interesting question here. The question is like this. Your whole support for this concept is because you said Yak Nahaz. And Yak Nahaz, you're assuming, is the first night of Pesach, because you're saying Shechianu. Tesis says it's Lavdavka. It could be Yak Nahaz is not the first night of Pesach. It could be Sukkot. Well, Sukkot is the beginning of Yom Tov. You probably also have wine. But guess what? It could also be Shmini Atzeres. And if it's Shmini Atzeres, then maybe you finished your whole supply of wine throughout the whole Sukkot. So Tesis says that that's not a real question, because you always prepare new food for Shmini Atzeres. And Shmini Atzeres is regular b'fnei atzmai. Everyone has enough food then as well. It's an assumption that everyone has. It doesn't mean that they supply him with more wine, but everyone should have 2 cups of wine because they prepare food. He brings a raya that when someone goes to a butcher, he wants to get some meat, so he buys a sheep or something. So the butchers should tell him, by the way, the mother of this sheep I just sold today. You know that you can't shech a mother and an offspring in the same day. But he doesn't need to say that on every day of the year. He only needs to say that on certain days of the year, because there's a lot of everyone's shechting right away for this. One of those days is Hishana Rabbah, which is right before Shmini Atzeres. And then, so what we're seeing from this is that for Shmini Atzeres, everyone prepares a big meal. Yeah, that's his customary. Okay, let's leave it over here.